Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry. Sorry I can't stay.
It's okay.
Thank you, Joel.
First I open my eyes. As far as they're going.
All right, we're ready. Good evening and welcome to the Kelly Center. Tom Kelly is my name and the name on the Kelly Center for Music, Arts, and Community in Havertown, Pennsylvania. We are doing a very special thing tonight. This is the first time we've ever done a book signing. We have an author from Havertown here who has been a longtime friend of mine over the last 10 years or so in the music business, Drew Pompilio, and he has written his first book. This is his first book signing party. We're surrounded by some friends and family here in the Kelly Center, and without any further ado, let me introduce Amanda from the Kelly Center, who's going to be asking Drew some questions, and Drew, who will be doing stream of consciousness answers. So enjoy. Thank you.
We're going to be digging deep. All right, hello and welcome everyone to the Kelly Center and welcome to our live streaming audience at home. We are really excited, as Tom said, to bring to you today a talent buyer and the author of this book. I have to do like the presentation of this book. The story goes like this: Adventures in Comedy and Rock and Roll. So please give a warm welcome to Drew Pompilio. Thank you so much for being here. I think everyone's really happy to see you here. So the first question, I think that's on maybe some people's minds, is what is a talent buyer? Can you explain what this means? What does it mean to be a talent buyer in the music industry?
It is someone that actually does the deal between band and whomever the money's going to be. Whoever is financially responsible for that show, my job is to be the broker between the two of them to get it done and to be, for better than less than the words are, secured in the actual legalization that you're supposed to play for me. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. Okay. So how did you get started in that business? Like, how did you become a talent buyer?
Back in the day, going to FIT in New York City, I became the manager of the nightclub where we would book all 80s bands, whether it be Joan Jett, Stray Cats, everything up and coming, Oingo Boingo, Lotto, things like that, that led me to finding old contracts to get to the first job I had, which was on Long Island for a small agency that had predominantly comics.
Okay, yeah, and I saw a lot of that in the book. So and it's really nice that you have kind of both of those worlds in there, the comedy world and the music world. Now, do they ever intersect?
Very much, because comics want to be rock bands and rock bands want to be comics.
Right.
Rock bands want to be just the one entity versus where, you know, a comic would like to have something else besides themselves to blame for a bad show.
Gotcha. Okay, that's interesting. Interesting insight. So what prompted you, because you have had a lot of adventures out in your field, so what made you finally take the initiative? Because you say in the book, like, people had told you for years, wow, you should write down your stories, right? So what made you finally say, you know what, I'm going to do this, I'm going to sit down and write this book?
This is very much blamed upon my friend Seth, who works for AT&T, and from what I understand, Seth works for HR. And he's responsible for hiring and firing the people that work for AT&T. But he was the one person in the story where we talk about going to the Metallica show. He was the one that said, you should really write this stuff down. And I thought, well, who really wants to pay attention to my song, you know, my ideas, or my stories, I should say. I was going to say my songs, which really what they are. And it got to the point where after writing them down, it got to kind of fruition where I'm going, it could make a book.
Yeah, and an entertaining one at that, and a lot of big names in here. So in all of your encounters, I'm very curious, so which one would you say was we'll start with the most surprising. I'm going to throw a few of these at you, right? So what was the most surprising interaction? Maybe like the person or band that was not at all what you expected them to be like?
I gotta go probably with more of the comics that I've worked with in the past, where it's, when you have a show with Adam Sandler, and Adam is very much a quiet gentleman. He's not ostentatious. He's not a showmanship. He's just, I like what I do. And then when you go out and he's like, well, I'd like to talk to so and so. You're like, well, you're a famous person. You should be able to do that. I think that's probably one of my more humbling experiences, where even though someone has so much fame, they're very much reserved in that they don't want to present themselves as that.
Yeah, I really like that story in the book too, because I guess you were expecting he was going to want, when you were going out after his performance or whatever, you thought he was going to want to go to some swanky place, and he was like, oh, the college bar is fine, right? Like, he's not one of those pretentious people, so I really like that. Now, let's see, which interaction made you the most nervous?
Definitely when it was working for Celador back in the day. So I left a small agency in Long Island and hooked up with Celador, who was the biggest promoter of the time with 8 offices across the country. And we're hanging out with Page Plant and the Monks, as I titled it in the book. And it was just one of those things that I did not think I would ever meet them. I don't think I'd ever come close to them. It was just I wanted to see the show. The Monks were playing all the wind instruments, from violins and cellos and things like that, to go with the Zeppelin songs, and also to have my incident that happened backstage with them was probably the worst experience, let alone the best, where I'm like, I don't need to really be embarrassed, or embarrass them, I should say.
Okay, gotcha. Now, you don't have to say names, but did you ever meet someone who you thought was going to be a nice, gracious person, and they ended up being a jerk?
Yeah, and that was from the first 2 editions of the book that I wrote. And I had friends read it and go, yeah, you shouldn't say that.
Right.
And we kind of recanted, and we went back to what the stories were. Yeah, there are people along the lines that you wish would be better, or you wish your experience would be better, but nothing that I would ever want to throw anybody
Right.
under the bus.
Right. But it happens.
Yes.
Definitely happens. Okay. So you've been in the industry for a really long time. So how would you say it's changed over the past few decades? Like, what in the music industry, especially your end of it, has been different?
It's one of those things where in the beginning of what I did, where each month you'd have certain albums come out. Labels would tell you what's coming out. You would have radio stations tell you what's coming out. Now, the music that comes out is not tenfold, but 20-fold every Monday. So talking to my 15-year-old daughter, where it's like, what do you like on Monday? Come Friday, it's a brand new list. It's just always changing, where what the labels were, they are not anymore. So it's everything that you can find on YouTube. And if you can get someone to get the likes and et cetera, it goes to way more than I can actually comprehend for what's new each week for the music coming out. Whereas opposed to the old days where you'd have certain albums each month. So just trying to keep track of everything that's new is the hardest part.
Right, and then I imagine all of the different platforms and streaming and apps and all of those aspects probably make it a little, I mean, things can go viral on TikTok. Look what happened with Fleetwood Mac and Dreams, right? Like, that has a whole new audience now because of social media. So how do you see that impacting things for the industry?
It's coming back now that for all the older things that you've mentioned, like Dreams, et cetera, that kids are starting to finally take a look at. It's something now where, with now tours being rescheduled and coming back to fruition, where you could actually be there live, I think that's going to be what telltales what goes on next as to. So my point is that, okay, we had a year off, we don't know what everybody's really worth, but now with the year coming out, that shows are coming back, who's going to be the new person? Who's going to be the new big thing? Will it be, Miley Cyrus still? Will it be Billie Eilish? We don't know until those tours are actually done, that we get to kind of, make sense of what the math is down the line. I think we have another year or two before that is proven.
Right. So you did touch upon the pandemic in the book, and I know that was maybe one of the biggest helps to you in actually finding the time to sit down and write the book. But how else did the pandemic affect the music industry, do you think, or what do you think are going to be the implications moving forward after all of this, especially for venues?
I think it's something where everybody gets to take a chance to realize what music they love and what they like and where it's going to go. As for what a promoter does for what the next big show is, we know U2 and Dave Matthews and whether it's Zach Brown, we know there are bands that will still instill a sellout crowd. But now it's at the point where we've had a year to see a lot of music come about that we don't know what the box office scores are going to be. We really don't know what's the next best thing. And as much as Justin Bieber postponed his tour to 2022, we don't know how that's going to sell. So it's kind of fun to see how the music will, the cream rises to the top. We don't know what that's going to be. So 2022 could be a brand new year as to thinking that we thought someone's going to be number one and they're not. I just think that it's been such a weird year of not knowing what people are worth that they kind of need to reestablish that.
Right, right. So talk about like the next big thing, or who's going to be famous next. I know you do touch upon it a little bit in the book, but maybe you can share with us. Were there either musicians or comedians that you had seen at the very, very beginning of their career where you said, that person is going somewhere? Like, I know that this person's going to be famous, maybe before other people did.
Yeah, the best one was in Huntington, Long Island, where we saw Wayne Cotter. We were a small agency, and we were just starting to sign people, and Wayne Cotter just did this bit about, his dad setting the briquettes and the charcoal and the right way to make a fire, to make a barbecue. And he goes, yeah, geez, Dad, I never thought about a pile. It was just things like that.
Yeah.
Back in the day, which were just outstanding. And then Wayne went on to do a couple of things for Discovery, and he became a professor, I think, or something else. But there are definitely folks that I've seen in the beginning that are no longer here. So it's kind of like, what's the best one? It's like, it could be Wayne, where Wayne should be the best comic since, White Bread, or it could be Maroon 5, where it should be more than just, Adam Levine on, what is it, America's Got Talent.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Yeah. I personally liked the comedian story. I like especially the Norm McDonald stories. Could you share that one for anyone who hasn't read the book yet? Not to spoil too much, but I really did like that story. So you could just tell a little anecdote.
Norm is one of the comics that I absolutely love beyond, simply based on that he writes for each year that he's in. He'll always make something different, but Norm is not the norm, as I say in the book, where he's just really kind of whacked. He's left of center, and when you talk to him, it's kind of like you'll talk about something for a minute, and you go, oh, I have no idea what you're talking about right now, because he goes that way. He's just one of those guys that his mind is always working. He's always on. He's always trying to find the next joke, and whether he fails or not, it's just that's his job. That's his progress or his process to make the next joke. And every now and then it kind of leaves you really stupefied, and you're going, huh? Kind of like, the instance I make in the bar where, he goes to drink a beer and he's not drinking a beer, he's just pouring it down his chest.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of going, okay.
Yeah, I like
Yeah.
I like that. That cracked me up. So what advice would you, we'll talk about both sides. So what advice would you give to someone who is trying to get into the music industry right now, or the comedy industry right now? What do you think the best route is for them to take now that things are a little bit different?
I'm still a proponent that it's live shows that you need to practice on. It's about meeting the people that are doing the shows. In comedy, it's about having a moment to talk to a comic and not ask them what makes them funny, but why do you do this and what are you going to do on stage, versus we had this great conversation in Electric Factory before it became Clear Channel and SFX and everybody else, that how do you get a job in the business? And there were schools that were doing music programs, and you can get a BS in music industry, and you can get a music degree in this and that. And we're kind of going, it really doesn't matter that if you went to school for 4 years, it's about what you've done. Like, where have you been? What shows have you done? What clubs have you worked? You know, how did you pay the price like everybody else for working for nothing that got you here? You know, my job was $160 a week and a third of a commission based on whatever that commission scale was, versus where Jesse in the audience and Tom in the audience were, you know, in the beginning it was like, you know, we're gonna pay you $1. And if you bitched and moaned about it, there was another person behind you that would take that job. It's one of those things where it's experience on the live show that gets you where you need to be. I don't think a degree in school, college, high school, etc. gets you there. You really need to know what it's like to work a show and be tired at 4 a.m. going, I still gotta get this guy a cup of coffee.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, things like that. And I think there's a difference now where people think that you can just walk into it, where we all agree on the old side going, you can't. You kind of got to earn it.
Right, right. I think that's good advice. Okay, Drew, so if people out there want to get your book, how will they do that?
You get to go to Amazon.com, you get to search Drew Pompilio, you get to search The Story Goes Like This, or you can just find me on dbuyer.com, and my website will lead you directly to it. It'll introduce you to all my friends that I've known along the years, whether it be Electric Factory, Cellar Door, Omnipomp, the Long Island guys, the New York connection, the Philly connection. They'll all lead you to the right place to buy the book.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for being here and, you know, being our first book signing event and interview like this, our little table chat. I like this. I think we need to do more of these, right?
Absolutely.
So everyone here, let's give another round of applause to Drew Pompilio. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
And thank you everyone at home for watching. Make sure you get the book. The Story Goes Like This. Thank you.
And follow Amanda Demanda as you can.
That's right, and yes, and follow me on social media. Thank you. That's good. Thanks. That was great. Thank you.
You did well. You know where they're coming from.
Thank you. Thank you. I did. I very much enjoyed the book, so that's great. Now you can make